Hello again. This is part two of the introductory lecture, and we're picking up again on the PowerPoint presentation and beginning with the list of what I call the perennial questions. And I give this list to you. Basically, my point is that all the political thinkers we're looking at this semester are basically trying to answer these questions, more or less. We're going to be discussing these questions from a variety of points of view. Different philosophers will have very different answers to these questions, and they'll have conflicting answers, and they will fight and debate each other on these answers, and we on these questions, and we still continue to debate these questions even now. Every political discussion involves some discussion of one or several of these points. And almost every political discussion begins with certain assumptions about human nature, which some of you may call human psychology. What are people really like? What is their psychological makeup really like? And there are some people out there who think that people are basically good. They are innocent. They will do the right thing if left to their own devices. But we know for a fact that evil happens in the world. How did they explain that? Well, according to their thinking, the evil happens because society has corrupted people. How has society corrupted people? Well, society creates inequalities, class warfare, creates all sorts of different conflicts. It creates distinctions between people. It forces people to play social roles. And this draws people away from their basic good natures. And people start becoming competitive and warlike. And this explains all the evil. So if we could extinguish the causes of evil, change the social institutions, we could, in effect, remake human nature itself. Many social thinkers think that the only cause of crime, for example, is poverty. Eliminate poverty and you won't have crime. So there are social solutions to all problems. This is what leads people to think that social engineering can solve all problems. All you do is rearrange society, and you can, in fact, rebuild human nature itself. Other people believe that human nature is something that's fixed. We're born with it. Just like, I was born a certain weight and size, and I have certain facial features, and I'm a certain race, and one can go on. All of this was determined by my genes. Not a whole lot I can do to change that. I couldn't decide to become an Eskimo overnight or something of this sort. I am what I am. It's rooted in my very nature. So evil or sinfulness is something that is a part of who we are. So it goes back to the old question, which many of you have discussed in other courses about nature versus nurture. Is it your upbringing that determines the kind of person you are? You read in the paper about somebody committing a mass murder, somebody committing some terrible atrocity, and immediately the newspapers want to go back and root through their childhood to see in what ways were they abused as children, what ways did they suffer in their upbringing that made them do such terrible acts. Other people think that upbringing amounts to very little, because there are some people who were brought up in extremely terrible circumstances, but turn out to be fine individuals. And other people who grow up and have lives of privilege and advantage, and yet turn out very badly. So they think that most of our behaviors in life are determined by our gene, our genetic makeup, or someone could call it original sin, for example. So that's So it's your assumption about human nature that determines what you think about these issues. Take, for example, the issue of gun control. Do you believe guns cause crime? Then you believe in the nature theory. Take guns away from people and we won't have crime. Or do you believe that people have guns because they distrust other people? And no amount of gun control is ever going to make you feel safer, because there's always going to be people who will obtain guns one way or the other because of who they are. So that's it's interesting when you talk to people about gun control. They begin with an entirely different assumption, and they tend to talk across purposes because they can't agree on what determines human nature. The second question is equally important and very vital to us, and something we have on our mind all the time, and that is, what is justice? We think about it all the time. Justice deals with how the goodies in society are allocated. Who gets rewarded, who gets punished, who gets allotted what amount of good things like property or money or honors, and who does not. How do we decide who gets what? And this is what politics is all about, really, is deciding who wins and who loses, or who may not do so well. Should we allow the marketplace to decide this, or should it be decided based on one's past suffering? For example, if you've grown up in a hardship environment, should you get certain breaks that somebody else doesn't get? Or should it be based purely on merit? Which might mean that people with some advantages, like a good education, will get more of the good things out of life than somebody who has been deprived of a good education. Is it just to take from some people and give to other people? Or should we allow competition to decide who gets rewarded? These are very difficult questions. Difficult questions in deciding what is a if someone commits a wrong engages in wrongdoing, how much should they be punished? There was a time when people were horsewhipped for doing things, or we hung people for stealing horses. Penalties tend to be rather harsh. Even children were executed for minor offenses. Why is that not considered just today? So the system of justice is rooted behind our consideration of the law. Whether a state is just or not has a lot to do with whether or not we will obey the law and comply with the dictates of the law. Everyone wants to live in a just society, but people have different definitions of what justice is. Is justice just about your own advantage, or is it about the advantage of others still? To what extent do you balance those two considerations? Collectivist or individualist society? A collectivist society means one in which the individual is subordinate to the interests of the group. That is, people exist for the good of the group. It's like looking at an ant colony. It's difficult to imagine a single ant. They have really no individual personality. They exist only insofar as they're part of a collective whole. There are some societies